everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday, and I hope you guys are enjoying these eclipse vibes. I'm back at it with another video, and we're going to be taking a look at part 2 of eclipse season for the fall 2024. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below. This will subscribe you to the channel. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Well, we've got, like I said, part 2. So we always see eclipses come in pairs. They roll through every 6 months. And this is going to be my video on the solar eclipse in Libra. Just a reminder, guys, I have an in-depth webinar that I do on both of the eclipses, both the Pisces lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse in Libra. That is an extended reading, lots of information on all the stuff that I can't say on YouTube, and some of my world predictions regarding these eclipses. If you guys want to check that out, it's for sale on my website. Head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, well, let's get right into it. So on October 2nd, 2024, we're going to have a solar eclipse in Libra. This will be taking place at 10 degrees of Libra. So if you have any personal planets or placements, maybe an angle, anything like that around 9, 10, or 11 degrees of Libra, you're really going to be feeling this one. It looks like the eclipse will be coming in around 11:49 a.m. on the Pacific coast, 1:49 p.m. Central, and 2:49 p.m. on the East Coast. I know we have people all over the world, so adjust your time zones accordingly. But you guys are watching this early, right on the heels probably of this incoming Pisces lunar eclipse. So we don't have to actually wait for the day of the eclipse to see the events transpire. We're going to see for the next 2 weeks that the energies are going to be building into what will be essentially a new moon on steroids. Good news is that we've also experienced a solar eclipse in Libra before. So you may want to go back and look at the fall of 2023 and kind of reevaluate what was taking place for you back then. This is obviously an air sign, so it's going to be about information, socializing, and it's in the sign Libra, ruled by Venus. So it's about relationships, balance, diplomacy, and obviously the South Node deals with the past. So we've got a new opportunity, new moon, to essentially set intentions revolving around what we're breaking away from, right? The South Node. We can sometimes see familiar faces, people from the past come back. There can definitely be lots of clearing revolving around relationships. And eclipses are emotional, right? Especially because they represent kind of endings and beginnings. The good news is that this is a solar eclipse. So it's going to be much more about action, planting seeds, new beginnings. And you'll see some of the effects of this start unfolding over the next couple of weeks. But within about 6 months is when you're going to start to really see the fruit of what this particular eclipse is going to bring when we see a full moon in Libra in 2025. Now, what happens during a solar eclipse? Essentially, this is an alignment that's involving the sun and the moon. So what makes this a little bit different is that a solar eclipse happens when the moon passes directly between the sun and the earth. So it casts a shadow on the earth, and all eclipses deal with either illuminating something or eclipsing something, and we see like this balance between the light and the dark. So appropriate for Libra because that is the scales. And this alignment only happens during a new moon. So we're only going to see generally most years 2 solar eclipses taking place. So this is the second one that we're experiencing this year. Not every eclipse is the same. You know, they're all different depending on their degrees, the aspects, the signs. So this one we haven't really seen for some time. This eclipse cycle kind of dates back to some of the eclipses that we were seeing around about 19 years ago. Anyway, so the eclipse in itself, the themes and the lessons that we kind of deal with when eclipses come in is always transformation and change. So you're going to see that solar eclipses represent major life changes. So things like endings of cycles, bringing in something new on an individual level, we're going to be feeling like we have to kind of find a new way forward. There's always some sense of, revelation or insight that comes with eclipses as well, even if that unfolds at a later date, because something that was hidden now comes to light. So yes, we can see that secrets are revealed. There are, hidden aspects of our lives that become more visible to us now, and we get clarity on situations as we're moving forward. And solar eclipses always deal with power and shadow. So this represents dealing with the shadow side of life. Libra is relationships. So the shadow side of who we collaborate with, we work with, we partner with, who we're in relationships with, and things being unveiled to us that's encouraging us to confront our fears, our hidden desires, and things that are associated with what we have a tendency to kind of keep private. So this can be a period where there is deep introspection right around the time of the eclipse. But new moon solar eclipses are perfect for renewal, even though they can be a little intense and they definitely accelerate some sense of change in our lives. It is possible for, us to kind of turn over a new leaf. So if we've been feeling lost or stuck in a situation, it can kind of provide the opportunity to kind of catapult us into something new, which is interesting because this is a South Node eclipse. So the South Node is the past. So we may have to kind of go back to the past, reevaluate, clear stuff out to be able to set new intentions and relationships to other people, other things in our lives. And I feel like this is a very karmic eclipse, right? You're going to hear a lot of people talk about karma and soulmates and all that stuff. But because it's in Libra, it is about partnerships. And because of the connection to the South Node, it is past tense. It is the past that's getting kind of, brought back up. And some of the aspects that we are seeing that are being made to Saturn at the time of the eclipse makes this one particularly karmic. Now, it'll be happening at 10 degrees of Libra and change. And 10 degrees in degree astrology always deals with Capricorn. So it's about things that are long-standing, right? Older things. It can be about age differences, history in relationships, uncovering things, dealing with problems, moving through gloomy or dark periods in our relationships to others. But it can also be connected to, hard work, right? We think of Capricorn of having to kind of climb that steep hill. And we can also see that there can be some stuff that can be coming up that's showing us where we are stuck in the past. And that's really my takeaway from this particular, this eclipse, where if we get stuck in the past, where it inhibits us from being able to kind of move forward in new relationship opportunities. So with the sun and the moon coming together, it's like the balancing of the scales when it comes to relationships. And our actions, the sun, and our emotions, the moon, is going to be showing us about who and what we're attaching ourselves to. Now, I'd like to read you guys the Sabian symbol. As you know, I like to read the symbols to get a little bit more food for thought, and I always round up. So I'm going to be reading to you guys the 11 degrees of Libra. All right, so 11 degrees of Libra, a professor peering over his glasses. The keyword is specialization. The theme is scholarship. The symbol speaks to the excellence, pride, and confidence required of any individual who seeks to establish and maintain a position of authority of himself. The image of a professor peering over his glasses dramatizes the process of education. The implication here is that men tend to sharpen and refine their skills and knowledge in those areas that promise the greatest rewards, or that gain them the highest respect, esteem, and admiration of their fellows. The emphasis here is on the ability to stimulate learning and on the transfer of information and techniques to the next generation. At its highest, this represents mastership in some unique field or a special gift for teaching. Watch for intellectual intimidation or simple delight in making others feel incompetent or inferior. The accent is on skill and knowledge. Expert advice may be sought to answer some perplexing questions. Your greatest advantage lies in sticking with what you are good at. Let others handle the rest. Guard against the temptation to give advice on matters which you have little experience or knowledge. Try not to be a know-it-all and give the impression that you have all the answers. Don't make others feel small by belittling their lack of knowledge or criticizing them in front of others. Stepping stones are knowledge, wisdom, specialization, skill, proficiency, know-how, expertise, self-refinement, mastery, instruction, and responsibility. So my takeaway from that is reading that, a couple things. First of all, what are we learning within our relationships? And how can we maybe give advice and maybe teach from experience? While simultaneously, when we're in relationships, allow there to be opportunities to let other people step in and support us. And that could be, a partner, a working relationship, a friendship. It could also represent working with a specialist, especially if you need somebody to help, style or design something, right? Libra is a very artistic sign. Or if you need a therapist to step in and intervene and kind of help with some relationship issues by, assuming that you don't know it all or knowing that you don't know it all and kind of passing the wand to somebody else and saying, you know what, I think you're going to know better. Also in relationships, giving partners the opportunity to kind of jump in and help you with something or maybe assist with something or take on a task because they may actually be better at it. And I think for a lot of people, this is going to be about learning how to delegate tasks better in life. And that could be in an office, space with like a manager that's talking to employees and knowing who's going to have what strengths and how they can kind of apply themselves in certain areas to help the team. That could also be, I think, in creative collaboration, because Libra could be about that as well. So what are we learning in relationships? How can we speak on our experience? Maybe recognizing and realizing that we don't always have all the answers and that there may be somebody out there who knows better than us, and collaborating, is going to actually benefit us in some way. 2 is better than 1, right? That's what Libra always teaches us. So this particular eclipse is happening in the second decan of Libra. So it's at 10 degrees. So it's kind of in the center of this particular sign. And the second decan of Libra is associated with Saturn. So this is where obviously Saturn is, exalted. Seeing Saturn in Libra teaches us that true strength can be through partnership and diplomacy, and commitment in relationships can really go the distance, and it can weather anything as long as it's in balance. So with this connection with Saturn, it brings a much more serious emphasis and kind of structured theme to this particular degree of Libra. And it can also be talking about, social balance and law and order that can kind of come up too, because Saturn is seen as like an authority figure. So something to kind of think about while this eclipse is kind of coming up for you is obviously, focus on fairness, justice, and balance of power in the area of Libra in your chart. So I know it's going to be in different houses for everybody. But look at which house Libra is in, and that's where you're going to be reevaluating or kind of balancing something. And for some people, it is possible this eclipse could manifest as bringing up contracts, right? Legal matters, some kind of negotiation in that particular area of your life. Now, this also brings the theme with this decan of commitment and responsibility, because, commitment can be Libra, but responsibility can be Saturn. And with commitments comes responsibility, time, right? Energy, emotions, money. So we're going to be looking at relationships through a lens of duty and responsibility. And sometimes it can be about the challenges in maintaining harmony in some kind of relationship to someone or something. And Libra is a sign that's associated with aesthetics. Saturn is about kind of morals. So I think there will be an emphasis on creating beauty and refining things and creating order. But also focusing on like moral and ethical standards. And that can be within relationships, but it could really apply to anything depending on where you have it in your chart. Now, this is the second solar eclipse, like I said, that we've had in Libra. So I do feel like we are prepared for this because we've already experienced one before. But this is also going to be the last eclipse that we're going to be seeing in Libra, the last solar eclipse. So for those of you guys who have really prominent Libra placements, make the most of this. This is going to be the last one that you're going to be kind of working with for the better part of like the next 6 months. If we go back in time and we look at the last solar eclipse that we had in Libra, like I said, this was in October of 2023. And let's see, right here. And it was at 21 degrees of Libra. Okay, so you might want to think about what was happening then. A little bit of a different flavor, right? Still a South Node eclipse, pretty close to the South Node, as is this one. And Venus was in opposition to Saturn. So it was the setup for, I think, challenges with work, productivity, with health, issues with scheduling, feeling like we're not totally pleased in some of our relationships or partnerships, to be honest with you, because we have debilitated Venus in Virgo where we kind of air out some of our issues. And then the opposition to Saturn, which was kind of talking about feeling stretched and kind of kept apart from what it is that we really want, or maybe not getting what we need. So this time around, a little different, where you're still going to see some aspects to Saturn, but interestingly enough, the ruler is going to be trining Saturn, which I think is actually pretty positive. But the eclipse itself is actually going to quincunx Saturn. So we'll get into that in a second. But all you got to know is that this is a South Node eclipse. And these eclipses have all been like topsy-turvy. Like if you guys heard me talk about the lunar eclipse in Pisces, it was a full moon, but the Sabian symbol dealt with like a new moon, and it was conjunct the North Node, which means the future, and it's like beginning and endings are kind of all over the place. Lots of similar themes with this particular solar eclipse. But when we look at the South Node, which will continue to stay in Libra until the beginning of 2025, when we have an eclipse that's close to the South Node, it's within 4 degrees, what we're really looking at is past life and focus on relationships, or what has our relationship been to this particular area of our life. So just as an example for like, let's say Aries rising, right? Who have I partnered with in the past, and where am I repeating similar patterns in relationships, and where am I feeling like there is a need to maybe reconnect to the past or reevaluate the past, or maybe you're hearing from the past in some way. So definitely paying attention to where we're really feeling like, is it possible to be diplomatic with other people? And that could be marriages, partnerships. It can be with the South Node in Libra, kind of reflecting on where we need to tap into our ability to kind of be the peacekeeper and kind of be a mediator. And maybe that's beneficial. Maybe we need that right now. For some people, it can mean, no, I no longer want to continue these patterns. I don't want to rely on another person. I'm not fulfilled in certain relationship dynamics. I'm moving away from it. So it's going to depend on your personal astrology. But one of the themes that comes up, I think, for a South Node in Libra is definitely codependency, and having a tendency of being over-dependent on other people, especially when it comes to the need for validation and identity. Identifying part of your identity being kind of like tied up in a relationship with another person, or, in a particular direction. So this can manifest with the South Node in Libra as a tendency to lose ourselves in relationships because we're prioritizing others' needs over our own. Something you might want to just kind of consider as this eclipse is coming through is that something that's kind of happening, right? Now, karmic lessons are ripe with South Node eclipses, but especially because this is making aspects to Saturn. I think the key lesson with the South Node in Libra is to have a really strong identity and sense of self. That's very important. We have to know who we are before we can kind of meet people halfway and participate in relationships with other people. That means that in order to strengthen relationships with this eclipse, there is a need to be able to stand alone and make decisions independently and not feel like we're waiting on other people to kind of give us the answers or to give us the green light to be able to do things. Yes, we can see some conflict avoidance that can come up here, definitely with South Node in Libra. But I think that if we're doing this too much and we're people pleasing and we're saying yes to everything, or we're not kind of listening to our inner kind of voice, it can lead to an imbalance. So it's not even so much just on other people, but the fact that we're losing kind of touch with who we are. So we want to watch for suppressing your needs or desires because you want to keep the peace. That's something you want to watch for. And also, if you have to engage in healthy conflict to assert your own needs to better kind of stabilize relationships, that's okay too. That might be something that comes up for people. Certainly, everybody associates like Libra or the 7th house is like, oh, that's your husband or your wife or, committed relationships. But the 7th house is so much more than that. It is, in my opinion, I see the 7th house as like a boxing ring. This is where we meet other people, or it could very well be, a courthouse where you're having to, walk into a courtroom and you're having to kind of face somebody that you're kind of going through some kind of like legal battle with, right? So the 7th house is about where we meet other people and sometimes the challenges or the remote romantic opportunities and the partnerships that can come. It also represents this energy of what we share with other people, like our marketplace, what we sell, what services we have. So there's going to be a lot of stuff where this eclipse is going to be bringing up stuff with other people that are going to have an effect or an impact on us on a personal way. So for some of you guys, it's going to be like, I'm just seeing so much is going on with other people in this area of my life, and it's how I'm responding to it. I like that it can set the tone for more, or better diplomacy. I like that it can set the stage for, setting intentions for more romance, for charm, for attracting other people. Solar eclipses in Libra are great for focusing on artistic projects or anything that is going to require some sort of, aesthetic tweaks that you're making. Obviously, keep in mind Venus at the time, which is the ruler, is going to be, in a sign where it's debilitated. So not everybody is going to reap some of the aesthetic or financial or kind of romantic rewards. Some signs will more than others. Watch for being indecisive. I think that that's where we can get into some trouble, especially with Mercury very close to the sun. You know, it can be like minds on fire with relationships. We're overthinking it, over talking, super overwhelmed with what other people think, what other people are doing, that it can almost create more problems. And that can be something that we can see kind of play out over time. And also really focus on prioritizing your self-worth. I think that's really important with this eclipse. I think it's going to be about really valuing your own worth outside of a relationship with another person, and maybe taking necessary periods of reflection or solitude, focusing on personal projects, other things to develop that strong sense of self, so that way you're complete and like relationships then just become the icing on the cake, right? All right, so obviously it's an eclipse in opposition to the North Node. So we talk about the conjunctions to the South Node, where we can kind of find where we're hitting some of those, you know, maybe some of those points where we're falling back into old patterns, or we're becoming aware of some things that we didn't know that were holding us back. But when an eclipse is in opposition to the North Node, it suggests that, you know, our path to be able to become more independent and also to, you know, be more assertive really is about clearing up and shoring up some of these past related issues, learning how to lead, learning how to be bold, pursuing our own desires, and really focusing on doing what we need to do, and hoping that that's going to attract the right people into our life, or that's going to bring the right clients, or that's going to, you know, also incentivize certain partnerships and relationships to kind of like meet us halfway. So that it can be good in that sense, but I always have observed like the Libra eclipses in opposition to the North Node in Aries is like, okay, I'm doing this with or without you. You know, are we going together? Are we going apart? Like, where are we going? And that may be how it's manifesting for some of you guys. Now, we've got some interesting planets, I guess I should say goddesses, that are going to be involved in this particular eclipse. So if you notice, the eclipse is at 10 degrees, and we've got Lilith in conjunction to this eclipse. It's also at 10 degrees. It's off by roughly about 17, 18 minutes. So that's linked in. And we've also got, we talked about Mercury being there, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. That's about communication, mind, traveling, contracts, negotiations, that kind of stuff. But we've also got Juno, and Juno is the planet that is associated with partnerships, diplomacy, wives, right? Partners. Juno could be seen as the spouse. She was married to Jupiter, okay? So we've got Juno and Jupiter that are in a trine to each other, which makes me a little bit more optimistic. But having these two goddesses in close proximity to this eclipse, especially Lilith being at the same degree, I think is going to bring up some of the themes revolving around that mythology. So, you know, traditionally, Lilith is seen as like an archetype that's associated with the dark feminine, and it can be about independence, sensuality, all of the aspects that we feel like we repress and can maybe be a little bit more too taboo for society's norms. So she represents raw, untamed, rebellious, against constraints, you know, primal sexual energies, and also the shadow self. So everybody's got a Lilith placement, everybody's got a Juno placement. Definitely check out where those are in your chart. But Lilith will be expressing herself through the lens of Libra. So it can represent the dark side of relationships and partnerships and commitment in marriage. It can represent where there are secrets and things coming up in relationships and partnerships. And Lilith oftentimes can also represent the other woman. So that being mixed in with Mercury, which could talk about changing our mind, shifts in communication, how we're thinking or communicating with partners, options and choices with relationships. And then there's Juno. Spells trouble for relationships, just generally. Not everybody's going to have the same experience, but it does spell trouble for relationships where there is some potential for interference or third-party issues, gossip, you know, jealousy, possessiveness, demanding partners or spouses that can be kind of coming up. And some people who might be questioning or feeling tempted or wondering, like, is the grass greener on the other side? So with, you know, Lilith and Libra, we're going to see this theme that's going to be about independence and rebellion, specifically within relationships and who or what we tie ourselves to. So Lilith here is going to show a side of us that's like, you know, refusing to conform. No, I won't commit. You know, I won't work with that person. I won't settle with that other, you know, side of things. I won't collaborate, you know, I won't partner and be diplomatic. And she's going to be really focusing on being seen as an individual rather than conforming and giving up her freedom, like at all costs. It does bring up the shadow self. So I think this is going to be associated with like the parts that we may not acknowledge, or you know, what society doesn't deem, you know, acceptable. So that could mean we're going to see lots of changes in relationships. We're going to see lots of shifts revolving around how we as a society look at, well, what does it mean to be in a normal relationship, and questioning, or, you know, kind of even experimenting. And some people might be experimenting with different relationship styles. We might see committed relationships that are talking more about the need for independence, especially in terms of, you know, sexuality. And we may see more of a trend towards open relationships. I mean, we are seeing some wide trines to Jupiter. So it is possible that people are looking and communicating and talking about what they really need. And so, you know, obviously, commitment marriage, we know that's not for everybody, but I think a lot of people are going to be talking about like open marriages, and yeah, I think that's going to be a theme. And we've got Uranus going into Gemini next year, so I do think we're going to hear more about that as well. And obviously sexuality and power, because Lilith is connected to primal sexual energy, feminine energy. So we're going to see the darker side of like feminist stuff coming up, feminine movements. We're also going to hear a lot more about reproductive health with women, and people may be talking about or exploring some of like their more taboo or kind of like forbidden desires, and like learning how to express that in relationships a little bit more authentically. So, you know, when we talk about the conjunction, obviously this is conjunct the South Node. So it's not just the eclipse where something is boom, you know, it's kind of coming out of nowhere, but it's conjunct the South Node. So I think a lot of people are going to be revealing their shadow self. I think this is going to be about transformation and empowerment, especially when it comes to things like breaking away from what expectations are being put on you in relationships, any personal limitations you have, embracing your full power, you know, being more independent, which is very much the North Node theme. Yeah, we're definitely going to see some challenges and some conflict. I think that South Node eclipse in Libra, sometimes diplomacy is hard to find, and you guys may experience that in your own lives, we'll see. But definitely because of the rebellious nature of Lilith, there can be this sense of feeling like you're being oppressed in a relationship or in a situation, or you're fighting against something that is external, and you're having some kind of like internal conflict over it. But whatever conflicts come up can serve as the catalyst for change, right? So that's come up several times as well. Lilith deals with, you know, psychological depth. It does have kind of like a Scorpio vibe to it. So there can be this sense of really diving deep into emotional waters and exploring themes revolving around the darker aspects of relationships or sexuality. And I think a lot of people are just going to be confronting issues of power dynamics in relationships, especially in personal one-on-one relationships. And this will be urging you to kind of reevaluate if you really stand for your own desires and your own needs within those particular relationships or commitments. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because I feel like Lilith is very black and white. You know, she does not necessarily want to give anything away. She does not want to give up. She can sometimes look at situations and go, I'm not going to stand for this. So this is unacceptable. So I can see where there can definitely be some hard lines that are being drawn in relationships as well, when it comes to some of the topics that I've mentioned, where some people might be issuing ultimatums. Some people might be saying, you know what, some things have happened, or we've had some conversations, or things have been said, or I've, you know, found out some things that's been going on in my relationship that I'm just not going to tolerate any longer. And Juno is associated with wives. So I could definitely see lots of shifts revolving around that particular kind of archetype, right, of the wife, Juno, and how some wives might be feeling like they're getting to a breaking point in relationships, especially if there's anything coming up revolving around infidelity, because Lilith is involved. Now we take this a step further and we look at Venus, because Venus is the ruler of the eclipse. So depending on how the ruling planet is situated in the sky, it's going to give me an idea as to how this particular eclipse is going to go. So traditionally, you know, Venus is seen to be in detriment in Scorpio, right? So basically what this means is detriment is when a planet is in the opposite sign of where it rules. So this reminds me of the mythology of Persephone. Those of you guys who are familiar, right? Venus is associated with Taurus as well as Libra. The Taurus aspect is everything that's growing and alive. It's the springtime, it's flowers, it's birds, it's all the animals kind of coming out, and it's what's kind of growing and evolving. Scorpio is the polar opposite of that. Scorpio is underground, it's deep, it's volcanic, it is very sensual, it is about purging, it's also sometimes about betrayal, it is about really kind of connecting also on a soul level. And so Venus in Scorpio, what I will say about this placement is even though it's a difficult placement, it's about deep, intense, transformative situations involving love and money, right? So Venus is moving through a less favorable environment. However, Venus is making some very, very interesting aspects at the time of this eclipse, and it makes me feel a little bit better about what's coming up. I'm anticipating that Venus's placement in Scorpio, just generally without even looking at the degree, is going to be bringing up themes of deep bonds and relationships. And relationships with Venus and Scorpio are not superficial. Libra can be superficial. It's the veneer, right? It's the mask. It's the makeup, the extensions, it's the clothes, it's everything that we use to make something look more beautiful and kind of aesthetically tweaked and presentable. Scorpio is more about, no, we're going to get to the core of the relationship. Is there something here? Is there something that tangibly kind of brings us together in a very physical, financial, intimate, emotional way? So it goes beyond the physical. It's seeking that soul connection. And Venus being in Scorpio brings up, on one hand, you know, people who have Venus in the 8th house or people who have Venus in Scorpio or Venus conjunct Pluto, you guys know when you guys say till death do us part, you mean it. You're like, this is blood in, blood out situation. It's not over until you're 6 feet under, you know? And I'm sure some of you guys sometimes think about putting your partner there. But what I will say about this is that there can be extreme emotions one way or the other. It can be extreme passion and very sexual and very, you know, emotional, and it can be feeling like there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of connection, especially on like a really primal kind of root level. On the other hand, we can also see jealousy. Scorpio placements are known for being jealous, okay? I can say that's just how we are, because we are always assuming sometimes worst case scenario, or we can see the shadow side of life, or sometimes we can see through other people's kind of intentions. So there can be a mix of both love that's passionate, also a little bit of like possessiveness and jealousy, and the emotional stakes are very high when you have Venus in Scorpio. So there can be this fear of betrayal or abandonment that can be coming up. So having Venus in this sign, I feel like during the eclipse is going to be bringing up themes of the fact that we have healing to do. If we can confront some of the darker, more painful things in relationships, or learn to bury them or put them away or end them, then maybe, you know, we can have a transformative experience. With all Scorpio placements, there is this theme also of regeneration. So we evolve like the phoenix or the snake that sheds its skin. We evolve and we're able to kind of renew. I'm expecting that there's going to be a very kind of mysterious side to this, because Scorpio is what's hidden, and obviously Venus is not immediately visible when it's in Scorpio, so it can be talking about darker delicacies and, you know, finding beauty in the shadows, and sometimes some kind of like star-crossed lovers-esque things can kind of be happening here. This is also a sign that deals with trying to reevaluate the deeper motivations, right, in relationships or in money or in sexual relationships, and being like, what's the point? Like, you know, and any Scorpio or 8th house placement is really good at being able to do research, because they're really into psychology. They're keen to understanding, you know, what makes people tick. But sometimes Venus in Scorpio can also be like constantly looking for the catch and trying to figure out, you know, whether or not they can trust that person. They'll go digging for things until, you know, they'll drive themselves crazy. And sometimes they'll go digging and they ultimately end up finding something, and then they're like, aha, you know. So you guys will probably laugh watching this, because you're like, yes, I've done that. So, you know, be mindful that lots of themes revolving around exposing the shadow, honesty and transparency, things coming to the surface, especially things that we would probably prefer hidden, can come up. I do think we're going to deal with themes revolving around possessions and what we deem valuable, especially that financial exchange that we have with other people. Joint accounts, inheritances, taxes, investments, all of that kind of comes up with Venus in Scorpio, because it represents worth, and sometimes hidden worth and value, and what we're valuing that's kind of getting reevaluated. Watch for control issues with this placement. Yes, it can kind of be a little tit for tat, and there can definitely be some intensity, but I feel like the aspects that Venus is making makes me feel a little bit better, because we're going to see some harmony that's going on between Venus, Saturn, and Mars, where even though this is a solar eclipse in an air sign, we're going to see a grand water trine that's going to be setting up, which is very emotional. It's very healing. It's very psychic. And for some people, it could be that straw that kind of breaks the camel's back. That's like, this one thing happened in this relationship. Okay, I'm done. I'm making peace with it. I'm cutting ties, and I'm kind of like moving forward. Doesn't make it easy, but unfortunately, you know, whenever we have eclipses or whenever we have new or full moons in Libra, this is always when we see relationship changes. So that's always happening in the spring and in the fall. All right, so I want to talk to you guys about something that's important before I get into the aspects. And I waited until this video to do this because I wanted to let the Pisces eclipse happen first, and then I wanted to kind of tie it all together for you guys. So if you're watching this on Tuesday, we're going to be having this lunar eclipse in Pisces that's going to be taking place around 25 degrees of Pisces. I want you to burn that degree into your brain. And then we're going to have this solar eclipse in Libra that's going to be happening at 10 degrees. So you got to remember 25 of Pisces, 10 degrees of Libra. If you have any placements within those degrees or in opposition to those degrees, all right? So I'm speaking to my Aries, and I'm also speaking to my Virgos. You guys, those degrees too, pay attention, because there's going to be reactivations. I have a hunch, and I've said this a couple times, but I really feel like this eclipse season might actually kind of throw us for a loop. Depending on your guys' chart, you know, you may have some significant event within days or weeks of the eclipses, especially if you're seeing this conjunct personal planets or angles, but I'm just kind of zooming out and talking about just kind of generally. I feel like these eclipses are going to be incredibly active in the spring of 2025, because we are going to see a ton of planets that are either going to retrograde or oppose some of these degrees. So you can't quite see it with your eye, because Pisces and Libra, they quincunx each other. They don't have anything in common. They create this funky angle to one another where there's nothing really going on. But the Pisces eclipse that we're about to experience, you know, in between Saturn and Neptune, I'll just show it to you. It's going to make a quincunx to Venus. So basically they're saying the same thing. Here we go, lunar eclipse in Pisces, 25, quincunx Venus. We're hiding away, shining away, not communicating, not connecting, being evasive, isolating, right? And the impact that has on relationships. So then we fast forward to the eclipse that I'm talking about now. So that's going to be the solar eclipse in Libra. This one is quincunx Saturn, okay? So we're seeing it both ways. Now, when I talk about reactivations, which that's just what I call them, I'm sure there is like a professional astrological term for it, but I don't know what it is, so that's what I'm going to continue to call them. But in the spring of 2025, we are going to see one heck of a retrograde eclipse season. So this is where you remember the degrees that I told you, right? 25 of Pisces, 11 degrees, or 10 degrees of Libra. Watch what happens in the spring next year. So we are first going to see Venus turn retrograde in Aries. And it looks like it's going to happen right around the time that there is a lunar transit. Yeah. Oh boy. All right. So looks like it's going to be right around what, March 1st? Yeah, March 1st, 2025. And some of you guys are like, why are you telling me this? It doesn't matter, because this is a solar eclipse we're about to have. The things that you put in motion now will have a big impact, like big results or repercussions down the road. So look at the degree which Venus will retrograde, 10 degrees of Aries, in exact opposition to this solar eclipse in Libra, right? So with eclipses, it's not just like you're like, woo, we have a new moon or a full moon and it's an eclipse and then that's it. No. You'll see if outer planets square that, if you have planets retrograde over that or oppose that in the future, it's going to bring that eclipse up again. So this eclipse has legs. Both of the eclipses do this year. So I think about Libra ruled by Venus
And the fact that Venus is going to also be in a sign where it doesn't do well, Aries, right? So it's moving through another Mars-based sign where we have more conflict in relationships. Any, Venus in Aries or Venus in Scorpio will tell you that all is fair in love and war. And it's in opposition to this degree. So March 1st is when this begins, where we're starting to feel, okay, there was some cleaning up I needed to do, or some things happened in a relationship, or stuff was said. And then we might feel 6 months down the road on an intuitive level, especially because the moon is there, that we're like, this is no longer working for me. And maybe some of you guys will look back and go, that's when it all started. It started in October of 2024. And like, now I'm finally doing something about it. So Venus is going to start retrograding. And when planets retrograde, they're not able to work fully. They're not fully functional, right? So things that rule Venus, like money, love, relationships, marriage, commitment, diplomacy, socializing, music, beauty, all of that stuff is like, it's going to go haywire. We're going to see issues. And when Venus goes retrograde, it does have an impact, I feel like, on everybody, but also on people who are heavily focused on art, beauty, finances, or if you're in the business of relationships with other people. So it becomes more internal. Now we're kind of internalizing, what do I love? What do I want? And it's in a sign it's Aries, right? It's a fire sign. So it's going to be what makes me feel the most alive, and what do I like? And, what am I supposed to be, kind of prioritizing or valuing? So that's going to happen. Then we're going to see Mercury come into conjunction with Venus retrograde. So got a couple negatives here. We've got Venus in a sign it doesn't do well in, it's retrograde, and we've got Mercury, which changes its mind, coming into conjunction with Venus. So then March 11th, we're going to see something else that's going to start manifesting, where we're going to see individuals changing their mind about how they're spending money, what they're buying, changes with their health, changes with their jobs, right? Mercury is work, it's commerce, it's travel, it's communication. And then watch this. We have the, obviously the Virgo eclipse. We don't need to talk about that yet. And then we're going to see Mercury turn retrograde. So right around the time of the Virgo South Node lunar eclipse, which is ruled by Mercury, Mercury's stationing. What degree is Mercury stationing at? 9 degrees. In opposition to the solar eclipse in Libra. Oh, it gets better. Hold on, watch this. So then we are going to see both Venus and Mercury retrograde back into Pisces. All right, I'm like watching so many planets at one time, so give me just a second here. Venus is going to go retrograde with Mercury back into Pisces. And Saturn, Venus, Mercury are all going to be around 25 degrees. Actually, it looks like that might be a triple conjunction. Wow. Around April 7th of 2025. Okay? Mercury will go direct that degree. What degree was that? The lunar eclipse in Pisces. So, I mean, hello, just one planet conjunct Saturn is like, oh, this is super karmic. But then you've got the North Node there too. So this is all connecting to the Pisces eclipse that we're about to have. And the North Node is there. By the way, this is all ruled by Jupiter. Hi, Jupiter's in its fall in Gemini. It's squaring all of this, making it all bigger. And once again, Pisces represents the great dissolving, completion, letting things go. It can be about peace. It can be about uniting. It can be about separating, anything that divides us. I'm hopeful that's what it's for. I think it's going to be a renaissance of film and music and art. And I think there's going to be a lot of people feeling very inspired to create some stuff that might be very significant. But the point, I guess, that I'm getting at is this is just from March all the way into April of next year. It's like on like Donkey Kong. And then one more thing, and then I promise I'm done showing this all to you. One other thing is that the solar eclipse, which we are going to have next spring in Aries, is also at 9 degrees, okay, in opposition to this Libra eclipse. I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's not often that I'm like, I don't know what to say, because I always have something to say. But I think this is all really highlighting the fact that if we are separate, if we're not learning to negotiate, if we're not learning to work well with other people, then we could definitely be in a situation where it could be very difficult to see our way out of some of the situations we're kind of in right now in our lives, but also like out in the world stage, right? Pisces is the completion, and it can be very confusing and disorienting. What I think about is also the other side of the South Node eclipse in Libra, that it can be saying like, some of us care too much about what people think. Some of us are afraid to leave relationships that we know are not good for us, or friendships, working relationships, committed partnerships. Some of us care so much and we're so worried about other people are gonna gossip, or that they're gonna think badly of us, or they're gonna, it's like, that's what's actually continuing to create some of the problems that we're in, right? So it could be two sides of the same coin, depends on your situation. But yeah, and that's why like South Node solar eclipse in Libra is so weird, because certain relationships will be breaking off, right? Because it's karmic. If it's meant to happen, it's going to happen around an eclipse or a Saturn aspect, and we have both. But maybe some things are falling apart because better things are coming together. That's how I see this. And I've seen this so many times without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. Like when I have a client with me and I'm in a session and they're like, my partner just left me, I just moved across the country, I just quit my job, like I don't know what I'm gonna do. I get really excited because we know that change comes in threes. But I get excited because I'm like, okay, so it's all happened. Like you've done the clearing, right? Now something new is gonna be coming in. And oftentimes you have that really gnarly breakup or separation, or you finally quit that terrible job before you realize your worth, and then you find something better that was meant to come in, but you have to trust that process. Next year, Saturn going into Aries, Neptune going into Aries is giving us a brief glimpse into the future. And things are supposed to be wrapping up. Things are supposed to be ending. So you may not be experiencing it now, but we're going to experience it in the spring. And some of you guys are also probably planning your exit strategy right now with this South Node eclipse that's going to come in. You're going to be like, in 6 months, I'm not going to be working here. I'm not going to live here. I'm not going to be in this relationship. And it could be in 6 months, I am going to be with the love of my life, or I am going to, launch my own business, or I am going to be bringing in more, clients or customers. You could use it both ways. But so many things taking place just with that retrograde. March and April is just like mind-blowing. All right, so 2 other time periods I want to show you where this is also going to kind of peep up again. This particular solar eclipse in Libra will become a full moon on April 12th, 2025. So you can mark that down in your calendars too, that you need to give yourself until round about mid-April, and then you'll see some of that stuff start to kind of unfold. Right about that time, Venus is going direct and Mercury is already direct. So I'm pretty confident that April, by then we will see some of the effects of this particular eclipse. But wait, there's more. July of 2025, and this is fun because I know some of you guys haven't looked at some of this astrology yet, some of you have, but it looks like the 23rd through the 28th of July, right here, Jupiter is going to be in Cancer, okay? And it's going to start coming into a square with this particular eclipse. So that basically tells me that through some of the changes happening in relationships, it's going to prompt expansion in the Cancer area of your life. Cancer is about home, family, living situation. We may see a major boom in people getting into relationships and moving, or separating and moving. And like moving back home, moving closer to family, building houses. Like that's my interpretation, that then the expansion comes because of relationships. And we might be seeing people coming together. We might also see that it's going to be about reworking and kind of bettering the relationship that we have with our friends, our families, and like reuniting in some way and kind of smoothing over where maybe we've had some falling out with some people. And then you're also going to see down the road, Mars will conjunct this degree. And I'm not as crazy about that, to be honest with you. This looks like it's going to be the 22nd of August through the 24th, because obviously Mars is not as strong in Libra, and Mars is going to be the dispositor for both Saturn and Neptune. So that's also reinforcing the fact that there's changes in relationships impacting individuals, and then that's still loosely squaring Jupiter and the home situation. So it's mirroring a lot of the same stuff. That I'm not as fixated on, but still those are dates that are going to be worthy of kind of mentioning. All right. So let's get into the aspects of this eclipse. I want to show that to you guys. There we go. So some of them I have touched on, some of them I have not. Obviously for me, Venus is one of the most important degrees aside from this particular eclipse degree. And well, Venus obviously is debilitated, but Venus is at an 11. All right, so 11, Mercury's at an 11. That tells me that this is where we're going to see things speeding up. All right, let me read to you guys about that particular degree really quick. So when we look at degree astrology, this is an Aquarius degree. And I jokingly said this on Twitter, but I kind of mean it. When I look at this eclipse, I feel like this is just going to be like a divorce attorney's like most amazing dream, because we're going to see, I think, a lot of people that are going to have relationship issues, and they're going to be separating, divorcing, breaking up, because 11s, so many 11s are involved. So on one hand, 11s deal with astrology. Okay, astrology, astrologers, astrology charts. I think a lot more people who are interested in astrology might be seeing astrologers. Certainly Libra, the 7th house, can represent an astrologer or a therapist. So if you guys need one, you can hit me up. But it specifically states here, number 2 on the list is divorce. Divorce, to get divorced, free relationship, a common law marriage, or some sort of open relationship. Separation, separated life. It's also about explosions, things that go off like a bomb, but I think these are like dropping the bombs in conversation with our partners in what we have to say. Noise, planes, pilots, airports, electricity, electricians, thunder, lightning, height, jumps from heights, jumping, floors, skyscrapers, buildings, rapid speed, promptly, racing cars, ingenious, inventions, everything new, modern, the latest style, foreign body, artificial origin, unfortunately suicide, nervous system stress, causing stress, sudden fast interruptions, being torn, stressful, future to look ahead. Once again, this is not going to impact everybody that way. I'm just speaking generally. But when I look at the eclipse being conjunct the south node, where we're noticing past patterns coming up, Sun is conjunct Mercury, which means mind's on fire with relationship communication, or we're stressed out having to talk to people or dealing with people. And then we have Venus at an 11. Ooh. You know, the positive here is that Venus is in a trine with Mars. So we have got the north node ruler, obviously in some debilitation here in Mars. It's a little moody. Where we're taking action emotionally. Now, we can be emotionally reactionary, but this can also be that we're being protective, or we're being proactive about the things that we love, or our home and our family. Trining Venus. So we've got the south node and the north node ruler in harmony. I like that. Where we can work together, and there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of emotion, and there's a really strong intuitive connection between the trine with these two particular planets. Water trines don't always manifest as physical things, guys. I know we want them to, but unfortunately, sometimes it's angry crying, sometimes it's a lot of sex, sometimes it's a lot of passion, sometimes it's about big change and transformation of emotions and coming together and merging. And both of these are trining Saturn. And Saturn is the cement, it's the glue that can hold two things together. Now, Saturn is retrograde, so it's not necessarily as strong as possible. It could be better, but it still is solid, and it's about commitments and timing and vulnerabilities and responsibility. So when we look at Mars trine Saturn, our personal goals and emotions are coming into alignment. We can be really steadfast and committed to getting something done. Venus trine Saturn, commitments in relationships, finances, you know, being able to say, yes, I will move in with you. I will marry you. Yes, let's join our accounts. Yes, let's invest together. Let's work together. So that's a really beautiful trine in the midst of what can be seen as an otherwise kind of rocky eclipse. Outside of that aspect, and you will see this actually happen on October 1st. So on the 1st, we're going to see a Mercury cazimi, and this is where Mercury is going to be exactly conjunct the sun. just pulling ahead basically in its superior position, which means that information is coming out, right? There is some information that's being released, and that looks like that's going to happen around 9 degrees. All right, so that's going to happen in the PM hours on the 1st. It's baked into the eclipse though, but likely the news of the, oh my gosh, did you hear about this? Happens right around the time of the eclipse, right before. It's at a 9. And Libra can be about legal situations, decisions made by courts and justices. And 9s can deal with, some national matter or international matter or some kind of international news. Remember, the ruler is Venus, and Venus is going through that. I wonder what the Sabian is for that. I didn't even look at that one, but let's see. So let's see, 9 of Libra. The old masters hanging in an art gallery, self-integration. Man's capacity to understand the world and the universe through his own personal experience. The image of old masters hanging in an art gallery alludes to the three souls in Plato's scheme: mind or intellect, feeling or emotion, habit or instinct. The 3 paintings hang together as a set or unified creative expression. The suggestion here is the fulfillment that all individual potential is achieved through efficient self-integration, a harmonious blending of cooperative functioning of the mind, body, and spirit. Interesting that you have the sun and you'll see the sun, moon, and Mercury all in Libra, mind, body, spirit. Interesting. Mine definitely would be Mercury. And I think body would definitely be the sun, and then spirit would be the moon, but that's just me. The implication here is that we are irrevocably linked to source and our roots, and that standing on the shoulders of giants came before us to revitalize the heritage and carry it forward with our own individual accomplishments. At its highest, it represents a special gift for healing conflict and dismissal, bringing up diverse people together in harmony and emphasizing mutual goals and objectives. Refusal to let go of outworn habits and traditions, selfish insistence on having one's way, even at the expense of sacrificing the good of the whole or the best interest of the people, aka putting our problems aside. Wouldn't that be nice? Unity, relationships, balance, integration. I like it. I'm hoping that happens. I hope that that's going to be the topic. That's like, let's just put our differences aside and let's focus on what we need to do for the best of everybody involved, right? I hope that that's possible, although the eclipse says there's like a curveball here that may not be possible. But anyway, watch for that message to be coming in. Remember that Mercury is associated with Jupiter. And that can mean that there can be constructive conversations and, like through conflict, we can actually air stuff out and find that we can come together and actually strengthen our relationships and our bonds with other people. And we can bring in new allies, we can bring in new partners, and we can kind of work through things. But obviously with Mercury combust during the eclipse itself, that's a little different because then, it's a situation where it's no longer in that superior position. So we have overwhelming conversations about relationships, partnerships, issues of diplomacy, feeling like our, partners or our friends or, clients are just kind of yelling at us. They're so fixed in their ways. They don't want to kind of hear what you have to say. And I think that from now until basically April of 2025, this is going to be about more conversations possibly being brought up by leaders, right? Or leadership, the sun, or more of a conscious awareness and having conversations, or more things revolving around legal suits involving health. Okay, you guys, you know what I'm talking about? Health stuff, because Mercury is involved. And some of the trines that are being made, it's loose, but it's a 10-degree trine to Jupiter, is going to be laws revolving around people's personal rights, right? Freedom of speech, Mercury trine Jupiter. Freedom of, being able to connect, collaborate, making a change, changing our mind, taking the higher road, making a decision to align ourselves with people who are going to be fair and they are going to be just, and not being afraid to talk about who we work with or who we support or who we're investing in or who we're voting for. Like, I think that's going to be a big theme that's going to kind of come up with that. And some of us may seem to fall out where, you know, maybe we are more vocal about these things, and then we have a coworker or a friend or a family member that's like, oh, well, you support that person, or you like this movement, or, you know, you like this thing, or you're, you know, buying from this company, like, you know, I can't support that. And then you're like, what? Like, this is like crazy. Like, how could something like that affect our friendship or our relationship? And then some people are going to realize, like, the trash is just taking itself out, essentially, South Node, making it possible for you to have, I think, a better emotional sense of awareness that, you know what, it's not worth fighting with people, and also it may be the healthiest thing to do to create an emotional boundary and let something go. Keep in mind, all of this quincunx is Saturn. All of it. Which essentially says that some of the issues that are coming up in relationships are kind of like, we can't figure out what the block is. It almost seems like some people are like in a fishbowl, and they want to see things the way they want to see them, or they want to be passive aggressive, or they want to act out in crazy ways, or, you know, try to disrupt the harmony in certain social situations. And you're just like, where is this coming from? You know, this is crazy with the quincunx to Saturn, because Libra says, let's work on it, right? Let's do this together. And Saturn says, no, it's easier for me to just, you know, be left alone behind the scenes. And it's not giving people the opportunity to help one another and really enrich relationships and help make them better. Obviously, like I said, Venus trine Saturn is decent. That does make me feel like some relationships will grow stronger and some will change, bringing ones in that can be better. I really feel like, you know, emotional completions, endings, clearings definitely happen with this grand water trine. Now, the eclipse itself is also square Mars, which is not fun, because anytime we see, you know, squares, there's tension, there's pressure that's kind of coming up. And the moon is reflecting whatever's going on with the Mars transit, right? So the solar eclipse, where it's like, hey, the action here is on communication and relationships, and it's like, boom, square the moon. You know, certain conversations and relationships can bring up a lot of emotions. It can bring up a lot of hostility. There's certainly going to be a lot of colorful conversations at dinner tables over the next couple of months with family, or there can be lots of issues with roommates, or issues or legal conflicts revolving around homes, building, developing stuff. Not fun. Sun square Mars means that there is something where there's some ego issues that are going on, and other people that are reacting emotionally and strongly, and potentially, you know, trying to be divisive in relationships, or you know, almost reacting out so strongly emotionally that it's like not giving people the opportunity to kind of like try to work with them. Obviously, the eclipse quincunx Saturn, I feel like, is about secrets being revealed, or all of the things we're not saying or not talking about, the things that we're not upfront about, the stuff that we're doing behind the scenes, private, you know, and Pisces is what we do in our bedroom, what videos we're watching, what photos we have. And to me, this is kind of screaming like, you know, a lot of people are going to be in relationships and they're going to start to see stuff being revealed that's like, whoa, who is this person that I'm with? Or I didn't know they're watching this, or I didn't know that they're reading that, or they're talking to that person. And, you know, for some people, they believe omission is lying. I'm certainly one of them. And I feel like Saturn in Pisces can be about withholding information or keeping stuff back that then becomes a bigger blow-up situation in relationships. Saturn is at a 14, so this can be about things you're not talking about with your partners or your business partners or your friends, your relationships, whatever. That can be financial stuff. It's in a Taurus degree. So it's like debt, you know, spending, budgets, you know, people looking at credit card statements being like, where did this payment come from? What is this? Like, what's going on? Like, why are you spending money here? That type of stuff might start coming up, or where people have been less than honest about some of their financial dealings, or, you know, kind of keeping secrets. And also Pisces can be scams. So where we're starting to see some scams coming out in relationships, and people either doing some desperate things because they are needing financial security, or the truth coming out in relationships about people's real ulterior kind of motives financially, which can be a little manipulative with Saturn and Pisces. Watch for that square to Mars, and also this is starting, it's a wide opposition, but by 10 degrees, this eclipse and Mercury oppose Chiron, squaring Mars. So this can be a continuation of home disputes, domestic violence issues. I don't like saying that, guys, but you know, when Mars is in Cancer, especially when we see hard aspects involving eclipses or aspects to Pluto, that becomes more prevalent. Like we just become more aware of it, or we see an uptick in that. And so, you know, relationship drama and strife can be such a thing with this eclipse that the square to Mars can be like, yeah, you know, you got a roommate slamming doors. You've got somebody who is telling you that, you know, you need to leave, you need to vacate your property, and you're getting, you know, served with eviction papers. And I know people don't want to hear this. I'm aware that a lot of you guys are going to listen to this and you're going to be like, great, so everybody's going to fight and lose their home, and, you know, they're going to end their relationships. I'm not saying that. But you will see a lot more of this over the next 6 months. So awareness is everything. So the way to kind of work with this, I think, is to look at some of the positive aspects that's going on during this particular moon. The most positive aspect you're going to see is the fact that you're going to have some kind of an epiphany, a conversation, an awareness, and some insight on October 1st that is like ping, and it could be a dream, or maybe it's something you find or information you come across. Maybe it's an article you want to share with your partner about relationships. I don't know. Maybe you decide to call a therapist and say, hey, we're going to work through this, or you need a mediator. The best aspect is going to be the fact that this is going to trine Jupiter, and it's a wide trine. I mean, this is me really stretching it, because it's about 11 degrees, which says, hey, you know, we can set new intentions with relationships as long as we communicate or we talk. Maybe we go for a walk. Maybe we go on a road trip. Maybe we start reading a book together and learning about how we can better our relationship. The other aspect that I think is decent is the Venus trine Mars trine Saturn. But you see, the thing with the water signs is that, you know, the 4th, 8th, and 12th house, or the water signs, is about ends of situations. It's about transformation and, you know, working through the gunk and the trauma and purging and healing, and then learning how to transmute that and then letting it go. So for some of us, the medicine is being like, yeah, this isn't working. It's time for it to go. And like working with the energy of the eclipse, you know? And some of you guys, that won't happen immediately. It doesn't mean it has to be a relationship or a job or a person, but it could manifest as that, or at least your relationship to something, and kind of realizing and recognizing that it may be the time to actually make some of these changes. The final aspect that I did want to kind of touch on is the fact that Jupiter is in a square to Neptune. So obviously that can be a little delulu for some of us. You know, Jupiter in Gemini, I think, is about asking questions, being inquisitive, you know, learning more, wanting to kind of learn more. And certainly we can get a little overwhelmed with all of the things that we're juggling there. But with Jupiter square Neptune, we've already had the Jupiter square Saturn in August, where we started feeling where we were delayed. And then Jupiter can be about our faith, our philosophy, you know, where we're going, what we believe in. And then Neptune can be like, well, is that really what I thought it was? And does that change the way I think about something? Or maybe I, you know, read that wrong, or maybe I didn't get factual information. And so now that's starting to make me kind of question, like, what do I think? And where am I going? So you're going to be asking yourself, what do I believe in, right? And whether or not you can believe what you're being told, whether or not you're telling the truth, or are you lying to yourself? Are you being misled, or are you just telling people what they want to hear? Which unfortunately can come up with Libra stuff, especially with that Sun Mercury. You know, we've all been there. Somebody's like, are you okay? And you're like, uh-huh. And you're like, not okay, you know, or you're biting your tongue. And I think that this eclipse can kind of get us on the back end, because when you look at some of the transits in the spring, it's going to be like that turning point where if you guys are some of those people who are a little bit more stubborn or reluctant to make the change, you're probably still inevitably going to come to some of the same conclusions next spring, and you're going to be like, now I have to do it. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be harder with all those planets retrograde. You may have no choice but to move forward, or there may be some things that come up where you're like, now I have to do it. I think that the retrogrades next year are going to be about forgiveness. I think it's going to be about, you know, some truths that are finally coming out in the world and in our own lives, and this recognition that, you know, maybe we have cut off certain relationships or certain people in our lives, or our families or our friends, because we believed something, and we believed it so much that we were, you know, in our head about it, and we really thought that it was real. And we may have to kind of go and mend some fences next spring, which isn't a bad thing. Venus will be exalted in Pisces, you know. And that's pretty much all that I've got for you guys. You know, Pluto is still sextile Neptune, all right? But this is an aspect we've been dealing with off and on for a little bit, where transformations of power and long-standing power situations are kind of coming up, and where we may be fooling ourselves or not completely awake or not completely aware or seeing very clearly with what's going on. Very, very strong aspects, though, to Saturn. And I really think that it's going to be about, well, who are we when nobody's looking? You know, and do some of our closest relationships start seeing that, and vice versa, and how does that kind of impact our relationships with other people or other things? Some of my thoughts on this, obviously, I do think that because Venus rules relationships, marriage, diplomacy, money, values, art, beauty, right? I do think it is possible that we will see some separations taking place. I do think that the decisions and the actions around the time of this eclipse and the choices that you're making or the things that you're saying will come to the surface next spring. So choose wisely, be mindful of how you communicate, you know, be diplomatic, be kind to other people, but still, South Node and Libra, you know, don't take any shit. And this is also about really knowing that stuff's gonna come out anyway. So it's about kind of being transparent with other people before it gets to a point where stuff starts to kind of come up and you feel like you don't really have control over it. We can see legal announcements, I think, with this eclipse, or decisions around laws. And I'm questioning and wondering if we're going to hear some news revolving around the Supreme Court. Legal matters, diplomacy, mediations. I think that partnerships obviously will undergo changes, but this could be also clients, friends, family. Some of you guys are going to dump your therapist with the solar eclipse, South Node in Libra. You're going to be like, this therapist isn't cutting it. I need somebody new. Or you're feeling like you're ready to kind of cut ties with somebody or cut somebody off. And that's not just the South Node aspect. That's the square to Mars as well. You know, and like where we've become a little too comfortable emotionally being in one space and it's just like we can't do it anymore. And someone or something kind of upsets the balance and then we kind of cut and run. I think that we will see out in the world like long-term partnerships or couples split. So if you have always seen a famous duo or maybe like band members or maybe, you know, long-term relationships, like some celebrity that's been together for like a long time, you know, we might see some long-term people or older people who have been together for a very long time separate. And that's, I think, due to the 10 more than anything. And this could be famous separations of political allies where, you know, people who have always supported certain parties or certain politicians now will split off because of the connection with the 10. We might see certain business partners separate, you know, so if you're in a partnership or something and you're like, I'm outgrowing it, you know, I think that could be connected to the 10. But also now it's about strong relationships strengthening. But diplomacy, transparency, and the need to go deeper in intimacy and join, you know, resources and forces and also like financial management. That's very much the Mars and Venus trine Saturn. It's like working together through difficult times, and certainly difficult times can make good relationships all that much better, and we could be much more appreciative of who we have while some of these things are kind of manifesting. So think about that. Libra impacts things like fine arts, art dealers, fancy goods, social gatherings, weddings, women's apparel, wardrobes, and also clothing designers. We're already seeing it. I filmed my video, I think more than a month ago, but I was saying we're gonna start seeing a ton of retailers liquidating and closing down. So we're already seeing it. Actually, I just saw, I think it's going on, I wanna say with Macy's. But I think of like higher end chains stores. So I think of like Macy's, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, you know, any of the bigger stores that happen to be more kind of like geared towards women. I think we're going to see that. That's going to be kind of coming down, and that's going to be impacting also, you know, the values of art and also art dealers or anybody who works in that kind of like art or financial world. We should see some kind of highlighting some themes revolving around women in politics or women in positions of leadership. And that could be politically, but that could also be in terms of business as well. Obviously, a solar eclipse is never good for leaders, right? It's a negative omen for leadership. So the South Node being there and then Saturn quincunx the solar eclipse, it does indicate that likely we're going to see a leader fall from grace, have some health issues and issues revolving around, you know, their public reputation, We might see heads of states, drop. We might see heads of companies drop. We might see them get replaced by a woman or some prominent, woman rising, up in position of power, and that could be politically. I think that karmic matters are going to be really significant. I know I've said that a lot, but clearing out old karmic debt in relationships, healing emotions and broken hearts, it's about clearing space and creating space for somebody new to come in. Obviously, South Node is past lives, so some of you guys might get phone calls, text messages. You might be hearing from people from the past with Mercury conjunct the Sun. It might be that you're reminiscing or you're thinking about people in the past, and you want to be mindful that the quincunx to Saturn means like you might be replaying memories in your head and you might think it was better than it really was, and you want to be careful not slipping back into the South Node where you're like, oh, I'm going back towards like what is most comfortable for me, because I think that's where like a lot of people are going to be like kind of heading. Not the best time for financial markets with Venus in its fall and a South Node kind of eclipse, as Venus is in detriment. So with Venus being the dispositor, not just of this, but also of Uranus, it's kind of indicating more talk about debt and loss and, needing to kind of reallocate funds. So it's not really the best for the markets. And I still anticipate more market destabilization. I think we've been seeing that. We're going to see a lot more of that at the end of September. And issues surrounding around investments, loans, credit card usage, debt. This is going to be something that's going to be a big theme. And I do think that this is also going to be about art and inspiration and design. We can see those themes coming up. Obviously Saturn is in Pisces, and that is about film and music and photography. So we've got Venus that's in a trine to Saturn. So it does mean that there could be some significant changes going on with like investments being made to developing new movie studios, putting more time or energy into cinematography, film, music, that kind of stuff. But I think we're going to see like more, Venus in Scorpio is like darker stuff, the darker side of love. And we might see more kind of like movies revolving around jealousy and obsession, and maybe kind of like a twist of horror, or some love stories or tales that are a little bit on the darker side, or it can represent these long lost lovers meeting their untimely death with the trine to Mars and Saturn. So we might notice, obviously, Venus in Scorpio, we're coming into October, so there's going to be a lot more of like horror related themes that are kind of coming up, or the horrors that we're realizing in relationships. I think we're going to see a lot more people's interest in some of the like those like murder mystery podcasts involving relationships and lovers quarrels, and where other people kind of got involved. I know I talked about that, but certainly with Lilith being there and at a 10, I think that if I just really break down the astrology of that, it's here we have Juno, who's the wife, and she's in a trine with Jupiter, so it can be good communication between husbands and wives and committed relationships. But we've got Mercury, Juno, Lilith, and the eclipse. So this to me reads as like the partner that's having the affair with somebody at work. And, they're talking to them and hanging out with them, and there's something going on, and the spouse just can't quite put her finger on it, but something is off. And then, she reads an email or she sees a text message, and they're like, oh, we just work together. And then you find out that there's something more going on, that's my interpretation. And I think that it may mean that long-standing relationships, through communication, are learning to kind of express and talk about what they need in relationships. And for some people who are like, hey, you're right, it's not working, they can go their separate ways and they can dissolve things appropriately. But for other people, it may be about, some kind of document or information or conversation coming to light that maybe makes them really realize like, wow, this isn't working, or something has been going on. And, quincunx to Saturn, it was being withheld from me. So y'all better be careful out in those streets because it's the next 6 months is like, if you're somebody who definitely partakes in some of that stuff in your relationships, I think it's going to be particularly messy, to be honest with you. So anyway, I hope that that's like helpful in giving you guys some insight into some of this stuff. We will be talking about the eclipses as we get closer, and I'll be giving you guys my predictions for the 12 rising signs. I did discuss this in my horoscopes for September, so go and check out your September horoscopes, or check out my webinar for the fall eclipses in 2024. Go and see where Libra is in your chart so you can see where that's taking place. And as we're getting closer, we'll do a 12 signs video and we can kind of discuss and talk about how that's going to be impacting you guys. But don't forget, leave me a comment below, give me a thumbs up, let me know where this is happening in your chart. What do you think? What are your interpretations of this eclipse? I'd love to hear more from you guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, so we have plenty of time to kind of unpack this over the next couple of weeks. I want to see how the first eclipse shakes out. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching my channel, and I will catch you all back here very soon. Take care.